To our Gabayot, and to all who had an Aliyah. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
So good to be with you all today.
Amen.
After 3 weeks of intense reflection, supplication, and joyous festivities too. The Tishrei-specific holidays of 5782 are now behind us, and we won't be having any big Jewish holidays for a while, which means we have more time now to devote energy to enhance our Jewish bread and butter, our staple, Shabbat. Today is Shabbat Bereshit. The opening of the story is well known, and not just by Jews. But we are in the third triennial year right now, so we are going to limit today's discussion to the final third of the Torah portion, which is not as well known. The majority of these verses are about genealogy. Follows a standard formula. Whom parented whom? And whom did they parent? And how long did each one live? When I was a younger person and I wanted to skim the Torah, reading only the best action pieces and only the most important laws, these were the verses that I would skip. But as we know, I was wrong because the Torah has meaning. Every bit of it has meaning. So let's dive in. Talk a lot about genealogy here. For many years, we wanted to know about our genealogy, but we couldn't. Today, it's much easier. We have companies, 23andMe, Ancestry.com, and others. For those who have researched their own genealogy one way or another, what did you find? What are you proud of? And did anything surprise you?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I had a similar experience as well. I was not surprised. I was mostly Ashkenazic, European.
I am half Mizrahi, Ashkenazi. I don't really know the Mizrahi side of my family as well. And that's something that I wish was different. A lot of them are still alive, so time to fix that. Why is genealogy so important? What pride can we take from it, and how does it help define us? Now, we know that genealogy isn't always positive, and we'll get to that later. But for now, what's the positive of genealogy? Fran?
Know that it's a connection, Lador Vador, from generation to generation. And that could really, if we're looking at the positive, that connects you and then will connect future generations. Good to know where you came from.
Absolutely. Thank you, Fran. You got to know where you came from. It's what made you, it's what got you to this day. How you got here. And they are always connected to you one way or another. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Our ancestors were using our land.
Yes, definitely.
Nice.
Genealogy often leaves a footprint. And that footprint can be seen. It can be used for just causes. Anybody else? Rabbi?
I think it's a great question. I sort of feel like, my family stories are my story, right? So that it helps give me grounding and insight into who I am and how I am by understanding who my ancestors were and what their stories were and the stories they passed down to me, what they felt was important. And that can help me assess me a little bit better and more accurately.
Absolutely. They are a part of you.
Yes.
Anybody? Last answer? Yeah.
To piggyback on that, I think it also helps.
Yeah. There's stuff that we like, and there might be stuff that we don't like, and we have the agency to change it. And that's a great segue into the next part of our discussion. I want to tell a very quick story about my own immediate ancestry. My father is a rabbi. I went to school in a community where everybody knew who he was. And although I secretly admired him quite a bit, I tried to distance myself from him in public. I was scared, you see, that everybody would assume that I was a clone of my father. I wanted to be free to carve my own path. When people asked me if I enjoyed Judaica classes, I would shrug or deflect the question with a joke. People asked me if I wanted to be a rabbi one day like he did. I would say no. Later on, when I entered a community where my father wasn't as well known, I began to truly embrace my Judaism. Now I can proudly say that being a rabbi is what I want to do. But that begs the question, how much of this was truly my choice, and how much of it was my heritage kicking in? Did I choose this, or was it in my blood all along? I don't like to worry too much about the answer, because both answers are beautiful. Back to our discussion, though. Ancestry can define us, but does it have to all the time? In what ways does our ancestry not define us? What power do we have as individuals to pull away from our genealogies, and is it acceptable to do so? Fran?
I like the word you used. You have a really good word, Rachel. To change it and to shift, I think you said also, that not getting rid of the bad, it's our choice. That, we can focus on what we don't like too much. But we can say, I want to shift my view of this. I want to change this. And I think that's very important that we do have that power. Genetically, we may be who we are. Okay, and I'm not a genetics expert, so I don't know if we can shift that. But up here and here, we can shift and change. I like that.
Definitely, we have the power, not just as a people, but as individuals. Human agency is a big, big theme for many Jews. Anybody else? Lee? Thank you, Lee. Yes, we have a path. Genealogy shows us the path. And we are free to follow or to reject that path in some ways. But the path is there. Deviating slightly from the theme of our discussion, there is one of those verses in today's portion that I've always found fascinating, at least as long as I've read it. We talk about Enoch. He lives a long time. Part about being human is that we live, we have children if we are lucky, and then we die. It's not very clear that Enoch died, and a lot of people say that he didn't. It says that God took him. What might that have meant? And what made him so special, do we think? Or if we don't know, what do you think would be the qualities in somebody that is so special that would merit that, that special gift? Esther?
selfish for 300. God couldn't wait to have it back and was finding it, not waiting.
God couldn't wait to have him back. That's great because, God very soon after says, I am going to limit the years of mortals from now on to one. So, yeah, that's quite possibly what was on God's mind. Thank you, Esther. Anybody else? All right. Oh, Rabbi?
Was Enoch where it said by Yitalech?
Yeah.
Hanok et Elohim,
Yeah, and Enoch walked with God.
walked with God. Though it's not Im, it's Et, so it's almost as if Enoch actually walked with God, right? It's almost like we have the responsibility to move God and godliness around in the world by the way we conduct and comport ourselves. It's not just that God's there, but we can actually make sure that godliness and God is obvious and palpable in the way that in our sensitivity to each other and in our compassion for others.
Well, definitely, yes. Thank you, Rabbi. At the end of this Torah portion, humankind begins to act very wickedly. And in Bereshit 6:7, God says, I will blot out humankind whom I created, for I regret making them. In the next verse, the final verse of the Torah portion, it says, Noach matzah chen be'nei Adonai. But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord. Have you ever made a decision that you considered to be just, only to worry about how the aftermath of that decision might spill over to those who were not a part of those that you wanted to be affected? For example, when you make a law in the government trying to accomplish A or B, might be a very noble and just cause. You wonder, how does this affect other people? Anybody want to share a story from your life? Something along those lines?
I'm not sure I heard it fully. Is it how a decision of ours, if we thought ahead of time, how it might affect others?
How it might affect others. Because when God decides to destroy the world, but then God sees Noah.
Mm-hmm.
Noah was not a part of the reason God made this choice. Now we know that God does follow through with the destruction of the world, but he chooses to save Noah. God chooses to save Noah. Because Noah was not the point. The point was everybody else. Lee? Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Noah might not have been perfect, but he was the most righteous man of his day. And it's funny that you use the word hero, because the Torah portion uses the word hero for some people that might not have been quite so heroic. Children of the Nephilim. But of course, Noah, compared to them, is the real hero. So I'm so glad you said that. Thank you, Lee. Brian?
Okay. So when I was working as learning to be a therapist, and rules changed in our agency policy, where I could understand the good, that you could see a client at the most 10 times, okay? And I got it because I understood that you saw more clients that way and more people could partake of our services. But also the difficulty of that was the people, you can't get a lot done in 10 sessions of therapy. And especially for a woman leaving a domestic violence relationship, you're just getting started and you may have to have her referred to other services at the critical point. But yet, on the other hand, more women were able to get our services. So that's one of those decisions that I was kind of at the brink of. Like, I understand it, but I don't.
That's a great example. Thank you, Fran. Yeah, they had that policy so that you could see the most patients possible. But the unfortunate thing is that it does affect those whom you do see. It affects the quality of care that they end up receiving from you. It's a great example. So, rightly or wrongly, genealogy, as well as genes themselves, matter a lot in today's society. Even if your genes don't affect who you are internally, they can affect how you're seen by others. How does the world treat people of Jewish heritage? How do non-Jews treat you, knowing that you're Jewish? We all know the dangers and the evils of anti-Semitism. There are other evils related to the treatment of people with certain genes or genealogies. Are you male or female? People are going to categorize you for it. Do you not fit the binary model? Sadly, people might not give you the right to make that determination in public. Whom are you attracted to? Perhaps that's not genetic, but it's a part of your identity. You shouldn't have to hide it. Are you autistic? What's the color of your skin? Everyone can see it. To quote a lyric from the musical Miss Saigon, it's written on your face. And people might not like these aspects of your genealogy, of your identity. They will often treat you worse for it. It is so unfair, so terribly, terribly unfair. We are members of a larger group, but we're also individuals. And even more importantly, the groups that we belong to, our intersectional identities, should be celebrated, not ridiculed. There was a character in today's Torah portion, Methuselah. Methuselah lived 969 years. It's easy for Methuselah, if he were to see these problems in society, to hope that at the end of my 969 years, we will have solved this. But these problems have been around for a lot longer, and we don't know when they're going away. We are making progress, and that's important. We still have a lot of work to do. At the end of the Torah portion, mankind begins to become evil. And the Torah portion lists some of the reasons that God chooses to destroy the world. But is there more to the evil than is listed in the Torah? Is there more to it? What were the evils that were so bad that it made God want to destroy the world? Well, maybe prejudice was a factor. Maybe God saw the prejudice and said, this hatred is so terrible, y'all need to go away. We have a lot to work on. We also have a lot to celebrate. So let's embrace our genealogies. Let's also embrace ourselves. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Asher Kalach.